Richard here from Crystal Clear Aquatics, and today I'm just popping along to one of my ponds that I service regularly because we've got a problem with the filtration system, and it's going to be an ideal opportunity for me to show you a couple of ways of troubleshooting and a way to rectify an issue that I'm discovering with some of the Oase screenmatic filter systems. This is the pond that the system is working on, and it's doing a fantastic job, as they always do, in maintaining a nice clean environment for the fish. Looking great in here. Now there is a huge sturgeon. There he is, look at this chap. He's got to be 4 foot or even more from nose to fin tip now. I introduced him into this pond a few years back as a much smaller example. Come on. Oh, he's great. I'll get the underwater camera out in a bit and see if we can get some close-up footage of him. But all these fish are lovely. And that has got to be the largest Gunnera manicata that I've seen outside of Wisley Gardens. Looking beautiful. This is a nice setup. This is a pond. Once upon a time it was a concrete pool, and I was involved in having it fiberglassed, introducing some filtration equipment, and it's looking good. Look at them. That little cruise missile's coming towards me. Excellent. But I'm not here to play with the fish. I've got a bit of work to do, so I'll get round to the filter housing and I'll show you what the issue is. This is one of the filters in question. There's 2 of these units that are filtering the pond. Now this is the Oase screenmatic2 140,000. Fantastic unit. If you've seen any of my other videos, particularly some of the pond construction videos that I do, you'll see that I use a lot of these to filter many of my ponds. I am a fan of them. They are great and they do a very good job, but they're not without their flaws. So this is the unit with the problem, and you can see here, if you're familiar with the filter, what the issue is. Water enters in through the UVC, which is bolted on the side here, travels through the UV, enters into the filter here, and the first port of call is this screen. And the idea is that water percolates down through the screen, the fine mesh traps some of the larger particles, and as the screen gets more and more heavily soiled, the water depth on the screen starts to increase until it reaches and comes into contact with a little water sensor which is connected underneath this bar. There's 2 little metal prongs under here, and once they're in contact with the water, that will trigger a rotation of the screen. The screen will rotate and it gets dragged through some brushes and some cleaning areas, so all of this alluvium and silt and muck gets caught up in this collection cup. Now the motor works. When I plug it in and turn it on, I can hear some motion and some movement whirring away, so I know that the motor itself is okay. But somewhere between here and the roller wheel, motion from the motor to this screen isn't transferring, so something's broken in here. And I have a feeling I know what it is. It's not the first time I've had to replace one of these. But herein I think lies the issue with this whole filtration system in its concept, and I wish that there had been some design tweaks with this to address this potential problem. And I think the main one is that when this screen gets blocked, if this isn't working or if it's been switched off, the water then travels back down the screen and it falls directly back into the final chamber of the filter, bypassing all of the filter foams itself. And that seems a little bit daft. I don't know why this section here where it enters the filter hadn't been projected forward slightly further. There's plenty of space here. I mean, all this isn't doing anything at all. That could have been moved back. That could have been moved over here another sort of 10 inches or so, and that would have given plenty of space and ensured that even if this screen wasn't working or not plugged in, that water was still falling into the bulk of the filtration system where all the filter foams are. Now when it's working as it should, water does fall nicely within the filter foams. If you look on the reverse side of this, what happens is, as the water percolates down through the screen, hits this tray here, and this lip of the tray just overhangs this so that the water falls into this side. but it would have been nice if that had projected slightly further forward. Because as I say, once that screen is blocked and it's not working, water just flows straight back down the screen and just enters into there. This is the second filter, and this one isn't broken, it's working very well. And what a difference that makes. Look at that. So you can see the water is hitting the screen, but most of it's percolating back down through, and look at all this muck and debris that it's collected. That needs a good clean. So this is a really integral part of the filtration system, and if it's not working properly, it does compromise a lot of the filtration as a whole. All these flies. It's not a glamorous business being a pond man. A little bit whiffy, that. So alongside the regular servicing that I do on this pond and the filtration system, today's job is to fault find and to rectify this. Now, as I say, I have had to repair one of these in the past. It's only the second one that I've known to fail, so I'd like to think it's not going to be a future problem that I encounter with a lot of these units. But it's a little bit disappointing that what is effectively a very cheap component involves replacing quite an expensive one. And the problem that I found is that within this rear roller here, the gearing or the clutch that transfers movement from the motor to this roller, it just breaks away inside. So it'd be nice if you could just get a replacement roller, but you can't. So you have to replace the entire assembly, which is a little bit disappointing. Right, I've got my head cam on now. Hopefully you can see effectively what I'm seeing and what I'm going to be doing. And if you could see me now, I do look a bit ridiculous. Right, first thing you've got to do, switch the pump off, and it's disconnect the motor. You've got a couple of Phillips screws here at the back, and you can remove that. A short stubby screwdriver might be a little bit easier. I'll make do with this one. Okay. Do your best not to lose the screws, and then the motor itself, bit of a tug, just pulls away. Right, I'm going to fold this back down again. So that frees the motor up. You can see it's just a very basic, simple affair. This rotates and it connects to a little aperture, which then forces that roller around, and it's that plastic sort of gearing that joins the two together which is broken. So the next thing is we need to remove the motion sensor, the water sensor. Now you might want to make a reference of the position of this. This is something that can be moved up or down depending on flow rates. And so if you're happy with the original position and you want to keep it there, you'll notice on the side here you've got some little holes with, on the inside, some numbers embossed inside. This is on position 12. So I'll put that back on position 12 because that was working quite nicely. And don't lose these pieces either. So we can now remove this assembly with the mesh entirely. You've got a couple of little blue spring clips, one on that side and one just here where I'm pointing with my screwdriver. And if you push the whole mechanism towards the inlet, that depresses the spring clips. You can lift it up and take it away. And now this has been removed, this probably explains my slight grumble with these units slightly better, in that the water, as it percolates down through that screen, hits this little plastic tray here, which then flows into the filter, just overhanging this baffle ever so slightly. But if only that was just brought forward to that kind of position, even if that screen was failing, the water wouldn't flow back the wrong side of the filter. It would still enter into here. So I think a little bit of product design. Oase, if you're listening, make a new generation and just rectify that little grumble I've got. I think would make these a perfect unit. So the next job, and this is about the trickiest part of the whole job, is to remove the screen. This is a little bit mucky. Let's just rotate that around, show the clean side a little bit. So again, with Oase, anything blue is mechanical and it does something. So next you can remove these little thumb screws here. Again, don't lose them. And pull that section away. And you can now slide away the screen here. Now you've also got this little contraption here. This is the belt cleaner. As the belt rotates around, it's squeezed down between this little section here which scrapes. That just comes away. Just remember what position it came from. It can only go back one way, but I think it helps when you're taking things apart you're not familiar with. If you remove bits and put them straight back immediately, just to try and improve your memory when you do have to put it back fully, it helps. So the next job now is to remove this mesh screen entirely. Again, you'll see here you've got a little blue thumb lever, and this is something to relieve the tension. Little spring clip, there we go, which makes the screen here just a little bit looser, makes it easier to take off and put back on again. In my opinion, it doesn't relieve the tension enough and it's still a bit of a fiddle, but you can get it off. Getting it off is a lot easier than putting the new one on. And the trick I find is just to work both sides a little bit at a time, evenly. There we go, get that off. Right, now I'm going to give that filthy, saggy thing a bit of a clean before I try and put it back onto the new unit. This is now throwaway, that's no good for anything, and then I'll replace that entirely with the new assembly. And this is the issue, so the motor connects in here, and you can see as that roller rotates, it's connected to this little metal section here that slots into the rotor, into the motor. And just in here, if I were to grip that tightly with a pair of pliers, I'd be able to keep that still and still be able to rotate this. So that's just not working at all. Right, so we'll do away with that entirely and introduce the clean new one. Here is the mesh, a little bit cleaner, a bit nicer to work with now. So again, I just have to do a little bit of removal. Take that off, remove the cleaning mechanism, release the tension. So here you go, you can see the mechanism here. It's effective, it works. So this is normally the trickier bit, is trying to get this back onto the two rollers. A little bit of manipulation and a little bit of brute force, I find, is the key. Once you've got it started, it's a little bit easier. Now, if you're just replacing this screen, this video will be useful to show you how to do that as well, because the bulk of what I'm doing is true also for replacement. Oh, look at that, that was much easier than the last one I had to do. And in fact, I see there's already a little bit of a tear on this mesh. In the not too distant future, this will have to be replaced. So that's on nice and easily. Retension that, and away we go. Now try and make sure that the rollers are covered entirely, so that that's in its correct position. There we go. And then it's just reassembling everything in reverse. Don't forget the cleaning mechanism. The brush, this section here, which you couldn't actually see when it was mucky, this is at the back underneath the screen, and this little plastic bar here is just underneath that front roller, and the whole lot here just locates into a little plastic moulding nice and simply. And again on here, there we go. Resecure this side panel. There we go. And we can now reposition this back onto the filter. Now repositioning this, if you remember, these little blue plastic clips here are facing the entrance to the filter, and there are some little holes here where the base of this mechanism locates. Make sure that the entrance to the filter is in the up position. Push the whole lot towards the entrance, and then you can kind of locate it down quite easily. It's all very straightforward. There we go, that's in position. And then the final thing is to reattach the water sensor bar and the motor. So I had this rigged up on position 12. So on one side of the bar you've got these two little pins, and they'll locate two of the holes, and then on this side you can see you've got a little indicator that lines up with the numbers on this side. And then we'll just clamp that into position, like so. Right, just to reattach the motor, I'm going to lift this up again, make it a little bit more accessible. And you can see this little plastic seal here. Sometimes that's left inside the housing where the motor sits, and sometimes it comes out on the outside here. I like to position it back onto the motor. Now, to line up the rotor with the little peg in here, if you position the motor in the fixed position, bearing in mind you've got the two screw holes here, and the drive part of the motor is offset, so it can only fit one way. If you apply just some light pressure this way, and at the same time rotate the mesh, there we go, once it's in the correct position you'll be able to push that all the way down. And then the last thing to do is to screw that motor back down. And pray that I don't drop this screw down to the bottom of this mucky filter. There we go. Right, now we're good to go. We should be able to test this, and that should be working. Hey presto, there we go. Now we've got motion back to the screen, and that's going to be working again as it should do. Right, well now that's working, I can finish up giving these filters a good clean and carry on with the rest of the service for this job. I'll try and end this video if I can with a little bit of underwater footage, if I can get hold of some footage of that sturgeon, because he's a lovely fish. I'll see if I can do that. But otherwise, I'm Ed from Crystal Clear Aquatics. thanks very much for watching as ever, and I'll see you in the next pond, the next video, which hopefully will be a little bit more interesting than this one. But for any of you with these units, I hope this video might be of a bit of use. Thanks very much, cheers.